Welcome back to another edition of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I'm your host, Lamont Gates, once again bringing you the world of faith, metaphysicality, and spirituality. Today, my guest describes his near-death experience that gave him a clear and ultimate glimpse of the afterlife. Joining me today, ladies and gentlemen, is near-death experiencer Mr. Bubba Herrick. Bubba, welcome to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Seriously, it means a lot to me.
Absolutely, Bubba. No problem at all. Now, before we get into your near-death experience, I know it's very much all-encompassing. You've got a lot of detail to share. But before we get to that, I want to know a little bit about your previous religious or spiritual beliefs, if applicable. Did you have anything that you were practicing prior to having your near-death experience?
No, I didn't. In fact, something I'll probably get into during the near death experiences. Before I mean, I had an idea. Like I was like, oh, I should probably believe in God, but in my head, I thought that when I died, I ceased to exist. So I didn't have any spiritual or religious beliefs before.
So you had no concept of an afterlife, in other words.
No, none. I thought it was just black.
Very good. And we shall get into that. But before we do, why don't you tell us what it was that triggered the near-death experience to actually occur?
Yeah. So I was playing baseball in college at Jacksonville University. I live down in Tampa, Florida right now. So Jacksonville is in North Florida. And I was a baseball player and I had an elbow injury and I was headed in for a routine elbow surgery. It's called Tommy John surgery in the baseball world. And I had an allergic reaction to a part of the anesthesia. And that's what caused my near-death experience.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's not something you were expecting. But
No.
throughout this, when you blacked out, you didn't see blackness as you thought you would see. Tell us what it was that occurred afterwards.
Yeah. So I'll start. I'll start when the doctor said I was supposed to be under anesthesia. So I had a meeting the day before, and I was talking to the nurse. It was like my pre-operation meeting, and she asked me, "Are you allergic to anything?" And I didn't know the answer, so I said no. And when I went in for surgery, I obviously, like you said, I I wasn't expecting anything to happen to me. So the doctor pretty much gave me the rundown, and he said, "Okay, here's what's going to happen. We're going to put the anesthesia through your IV and we're going to give you this surgery. It should last about an hour, and you're going to be headed back to Tampa. Get back on the field. You'll be fine." And so they put me under the anesthesia, but I didn't quite feel like I was under. I was still awake. I was still conscious, but I had my eyes closed because I just figured, maybe it's going to hit me by the time they start to cut into me. Maybe it just hasn't hit me yet. So, anyways, they wheeled me into the operating room, and all the doctors confirm with one another that they are ready to go and operate on me. And all of a sudden, I just was hearing panic in their voices, and the machines, they started to beep louder and faster. And I was just watching the entire scene from above. And do you want me to keep continuing the rest of the story?
Sure, please do.
Yeah. So I was just watching the entire scene from above. And I was shown this well, before I was shown the life review, I was able to watch as my body turned a almost like a lifeless kind of blue color, and then this like a bruise like deep purple, and then just like a corpse like white, and it was like the white of the color of a dead man. And I watched as the heart monitors completely went flat, and I watched my own flat line on the table. And after my flatline, I was immediately seamlessly shuttled into this profound life review where it's so hard to describe. I'm sure you probably hear that all the time. Where it was like a movie screen of my life. It was like a panoramic movie screen of my life. Um, and it just memories of my life flashed before my eyes, memories that I held close to me, and memories that were really fond, but also memories that I wasn't so proud of, and memories that I had completely forgotten about on purpose because of how painful they were. And the life review lasted forever. And one factor of the life review, one important detail to mention is that I was able to experience the memories from other people's perspectives. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. Like there was a memory that flashed before my eyes where um, I remember my dad when we were kids, my brother and I, my brother's 4 years older. Uh, my dad used to beat us with a belt. And I remember just absolutely hating him for that. And in this moment of the life review where I saw this, I was able to actually experience it from my dad's perspective and experience kind of what was going through his head and his reasoning why he was doing it. And it changed my perspective after the whole experience on that because I understood that he was doing his best to teach us what he believed discipline to be. And anyway, so the life review lasted forever. And the last memory that flashed before my eyes during the life review was this profound basketball game that I got to play with my stepdad, who my parents divorced when I was 8, and my mom married this beautiful man named Mike. And he was just the opposite um, of my real dad. My dad was hard and disciplinary, and Mike was kind of a nurturer and a guide. And we played this beautiful basketball game when I was 12 years old, and it just stuck with me because it was just I don't know, I just had never felt that type of love from a father figure before. And anyways, Mike and I played this game, and it just stuck with me. And in my life review, we I got to play it again and experience it again, and that was the last memory that flashed before my eyes in the life review. And then after the life review, I remember feeling afraid of what was next, and I remember feeling angry at myself because of the my ignorance to I guess the idea of faith, but also the way in which I live my life. You know, I got to see all the moments that I wasn't proud of in the life review, and I couldn't. I guess the best way to describe it is I just wished I had a second chance, and I wasn't ready to move on to what was next. I was afraid, and anyways, then those thoughts lasted for a while, and those were the last thoughts that I had. My conscious thoughts was essentially like, I'm not ready to die. Then I was shuttled again seamlessly into this beautiful place that I can't describe. It was almost as if you're looking at the outside world from the perspective of the inside of a diamond, and you cannot. I wish words could describe it. And again, I'm sure you hear that all the time, but it's so hard to describe it. And everything was crystally and blue, and there were refracted combinations of light that just formed this one universal color. And time didn't exist in this place. And it's funny, like the voice in my head, the one that was afraid to die, that didn't exist either. I just was. Everything was pure, unconditional love in this place. And I'm there for what feels like an eternity. I have no concept of time. And I see this strange, distant figure begin to appear. And without transition, the figure and I, were just face to face. And he immediately passes me a basketball. And it turned out to be my stepdad, the one I had just seen in the life review, who he passed away 2 years prior to this experience. And we just played this magical game of basketball where no words were exchanged and neither of us had a body, but I don't know, it was like a telepathic communication thing. And we played basketball for what felt like an eternity. And then he slowly started to kind of like back away a bit. And he he changed his tone a bit during the game. It was loving and fun, but his tone slightly changed when he backed away. And it's what he basically. I'm sorry, I'm losing my. As he backed away, his tone changed on me, and he got a little bit more serious. And he said, "Okay, playtime's up. Here's why I've been sent here. Uh, I've been sent here. I know how badly you wanted that second chance whenever you got done with your life review, and I know how afraid you were of what was next. Well, I've been sent here to offer you something, and you can either stay here with me in this beautiful place for the rest of eternity, or you can get that second chance to do things right. The second chance that I wanted after the life review." And he said, "But there's one condition. If you do, you have a responsibility to live out what he referred to as your great purpose." So obviously, it didn't really feel like I had much of a decision because I had no conscious thoughts. It was a feeling. It was like, okay, I know what I have to do. So he slowly began to disappear. And then I was face to face with myself on the operating table. And I woke up on the operating table and I was punching the doctors because I was already fighting with myself about the decision I had made to come back. And and yeah, that's what happened that day during the surgery.
Wow, that near-death experience in and of itself is a mouthful. A lot of
Yes.
information going on there. It sounds like you described many characteristics that you would read in several near-death experiences. You had these things all in one. Now, I have a few follow-up questions for you. You begin this journey with an out-of-body experience, which is very typical with many near-death experiencers. Now, while you were in an aerial position above your body, watching the machines go off, watching your physical body turn blue to purple, was there any type of fear that ever set in?
Not as I was watching my body, no. The only time I had fear was after my life review.
Great. And many near death experiencers usually say they're in a state of peace, even though they're watching this chaos below. You describe this as an ineffable, hard to describe event. And you're absolutely right. Many near death experiencers do say that even though they experience this, you know, multi-dimensional realm, it's still very hard to describe it when they come back. And then you
Mhm.
were whisked into this life review, which, in my personal opinion, you hear me say this all the time on my show. I think that's the most fascinating part about a near death experience because you get to learn about yourself. And as you rightly stated, you learn about others. And in your
Yeah.
life review, you learned why your father actually disciplined you the way he did. And you came back with an understanding of, oh, okay, I'm not mad at him. This is just the best way he knows how to discipline me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
fascinating. Typically we would look at that as a form of child abuse today, but
Right.
there's something to be understood when you go into the other person's mind, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely didn't appreciate it. And I'm definitely not condoning that type of behavior. But I can say that, I don't know, during the life review, I just felt this compassion for him. I felt that it had been done to him, number one. And number two, I knew that even though it was a behavior I didn't support or condone or like on the receiving end, obviously, I could understand it. And it was coming from a good place, even though obviously it didn't seem that way.
Yes, and that's exactly why I believe the life review is so important. It gives us the other side of the story that our human brains would never attempt to even try to understand. Then you say you were taken into this blue-like realm where there was no time.
Yeah.
You talked about just existing. You felt as if, where we have a linear train of thought of past, present, and future, you just existed in this place. And
Yes.
it's here where you encountered a deceased relative, a stepfather, and you played this basketball game that you used to play with him when he was alive while you were on Earth. And you said the conversation or the communication rather was telepathic. Was there anything that was transmitted between each other telepathically?
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Was there any kind of communication? I know there wasn't talk
Oh,
with actual words, but you mentioned a telepathic communication.
yeah, yeah. No, it's so again, it's so hard to describe, but it just felt like we were connected in a telepathic way where there was no need for communication because we just both knew. We like if there were thoughts in this place, I guess the best way to describe it is to put it in human, earthly terms. If there were thoughts in this place, I would know what he was thinking and he would know what I was thinking, and there would be no need for verbal communication whatsoever.
Gotcha. Gotcha. It's instantaneous knowing.
Yes.
Okay. And your stepfather left you with a choice. And we do read about these incidences in different near death experiences where most people are told they have to come back because they have a purpose. Some people, however, are told you can come back or you can stay. So you're one of those rare ones who got this choice,
Hmm.
right? But he told you that you had a purpose if you were to come back. Did he describe at all what that purpose was?
No, he didn't. And the way that I interpreted that was after the fact, obviously, when I woke up on the table, the way that I interpreted that was first, you have to endure the process of finding that purpose. And then when you find it, you have to live it out. So I think it was there was multiple parts to the purpose thing. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but no, to answer your question in short, he didn't say what the purpose was at that time.
So it was multi-layered, you felt.
Yes,
When
yes,
you came back, you would understand it better if you lived through certain experiences.
yes, exactly.
Now, when you said you came back, you were angry at the doctors, physically punching at the doctors. And this is
Yeah.
because you wanted to stay?
Yes, and I was fighting with myself about the decision I had made. And what I mean by that is I was just really confused. Like what's the first few thoughts that I had back was just to show you like where my state of mind was what's real? Is it that or is it this? Or is it both?
Well, that's a great question you asked yourself. I can actually ask you the same question. Now that you live in this life, and now that you've been over there, what do you think? Which one was more real to you?
That's a great question. Which one is more real? Definitely that one. That one is more real for sure. And I'm sure you've probably heard a lot about the after effects of the near-death experience, but it's been very challenging. I mean, it's been 5 years since my experience, and for 5 years, I've asked myself that question, and it's it's been a very circular process, just coming back to the same conclusion of it. That has to be real, in my opinion. That has to be what I believe to be my real home.
And many near-death experiencers clearly say that when they go on to that side, that they have a hyper reality versus this one. This is one is almost like a cartoon level versus, we're like an animation here versus the reality where you were. You think about us watching television and watching a cartoon, and we're like, well, it's an animation where we are the reality. But where you were, we were the cartoon and you were the reality. Did you ever tell anyone about your near-death experience immediately, or did you wait on that one?
So I did initially tell my mom about it, but I was heavily sedated because of all the drugs that they had to use to bring me back to life and revive me. So at first she didn't believe it. And then after that, I kept it to myself for, I don't know, must have been 2 or 3 years. I didn't talk about it. In fact, I tried my best to just pretend like it didn't exist because the reality that comes with accepting that was just too much for me to bear. So I just swept it under the rug.
Yeah, and I can also imagine that trying to tell someone the first time and they're not believing you makes it difficult for you to want to move on and tell the next person.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, many near-death experiencers think that people may look at them as if they have some mental issues. If they went forth and told them about this, heavenly place where they saw their deceased parent. Many near-death experiencers also talk about after effects, which you mentioned earlier. Typically, they say they come back with higher empathy levels. They lack the fear of death. They may have some premonitions, precognitions. There may be electrical anomalies that happen when they walk past the TV or a clock or a watch on their wrist. Did you come back with anything remotely close to these?
I've never heard about the electrical one. This is the first time I've ever heard about that. So that's interesting. Yeah, but I'll say this. I was before my experience, I was what you would picture a college baseball player to be. And what I mean by that is, full of pride and ego and this self absorption of, I'm good at a game, so I believe myself to be in a I don't know, a better position than you. That's just how I was before my experience. And after, number one, it was incredibly humbling to for me to realize my own mortality. So with that came just this very heightened, like you use the word empathy. That's a perfect word for it. Just I don't know, and compassion, empathy and compassion, just for the human condition. Whether it doesn't matter who it is, for some reason I have a lot of empathy and compassion for them because I understand the pain of being human now. And also this very heightened awareness, and I don't know, like this heightened intuition as well that I just didn't have before my experience. And another thing is very heightened sensitivity to emotions and feelings. And I don't want to say I'm like a sensitive, like that's not what I mean. What I mean is I just feel things I just feel energies naturally now. Like if I walk into a room, I can feel the energy of the room. Whereas before, I would I wouldn't be able to do that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, in addition to the list of after effects I named, those are actually up there as well. You know, heightened intuition, being able to read someone's energy, not
Yeah.
necessarily their thoughts, but knowing if this person is up to no good or knowing if the person, has coming with good intentions. Many
Yes.
near-death experiencers also describe that as well. We opened up the conversation with the religious question, and you said you really didn't have any concept of the afterlife. There was really no religious practices. What does religion look like to you now after you had your near-death experience?
That's a good question. For the past 5 years, I've been curious about it. You know, before my experience, I wasn't even curious about it, and I've started to read some religious texts. I'm not very well versed on religion, right? Religion as it's commonly understood, rather. I would say my belief system has changed, and I feel like in a drastic way. Whereas I now definitely believe in an afterlife, and I believe that the afterlife is potentially what's real, the most real. But I wouldn't consider myself a part of any specific religion. I just believe in, I guess you could say, the golden rule now, and I practice it. Whereas before, I believed it as a thought, but I didn't actually put it into practice because it didn't really mean that much to me.
And most near-death experiencers, if not all of them, who come back after having a positive experience, usually come back saying that one of their purposes, at least, is to make this world a lot better.
Yes.
And many of them have changed from taking from others to giving to others. So it sounds like that message rubbed off on you as well.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Bubba, I want to thank you for coming on Real Spiritual Talk Radio and sharing with us that absolutely fascinating account.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Lamont, and I really appreciate your audience for watching.
Absolutely no problem at all. I'm sure they're going to also take away the golden rule message that you and many other near death experiencers emit out into the world. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, Bubba Herrick.
Thank you.